LSU opens up as 9-point favorites.
You are Locked On Vandy, your daily podcast on the Vanderbilt Commodores, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Vandy podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Corey Burton. Thanks for making Locked On Vandy your first listen every single day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube as a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. So visit FanDuel.com to get started. So Vandy had a really productive bye week in recruiting. They completed 2 flips. That was good. But now the Dores turn their attention to Baton Rouge. Seems like the Tigers are struggling a bit to find a rhythm. But what's worse for them is they seem to have a difficulty with quarterbacks that can run. And I'm questioning this opening line a bit. I mean, it sits at 9 in favor of LSU, but I don't know. I'm not really buying it. And here's why. Because the last 2 weeks, it's been brutal for Florida. Not Florida. It was brutal earlier in the season for Florida. It has been brutal for LSU in the last couple of weeks. It's been kind of a rocky season, kind of an up and down season, but like in these big games, Texas A&M, Alabama, now Florida, a game they were supposed to get. The common denominator here is athletic quarterbacks that play above their heads, right? DJ Lagway coming off an injury this past weekend against Florida, or for Florida against LSU, was an absolute baller. I mean, he had a elite pass to Elijah Badger to kind of set up some things for them. I mean, he was just on point, man. He just kind of took over the game and was like, you know what, I got this. And they struggled, man. Brian Kelly was just losing his mind on the sideline. Cameras caught him saying stuff to his players, which, I mean, in a regular scenario, I don't know, it may not be that bad and it may be overblown, but when you're struggling as much as this and there's disarray and there's players yelling back and there's bickering and there's just bad body language, it's not a good look. Like sometimes you got to rein that stuff in. You got to get control of that. So I think right now, the reason I question it for 2 reasons. Their defense hasn't been able to handle running quarterbacks. Marcel Reed comes in, absolutely cuts him up, dices him up on a zone read play. Just one zone read play, probably one of the most common read plays in college football, in all of football. He runs for miles with that play. Jalen Milroe, I think he's still running. I think Jalen Milroe just scored again. Right. I mean, Alabama has had their fair share of struggles this season too, and they completely dismantled LSU. And then here comes DJ Lagway, who has 1.5 hamstrings, right? He probably came back too soon, probably shouldn't have. An injury that looked pretty bad in the Georgia game where it almost looked like the hamstring, you could tell that something wasn't right with the hamstring popped off, looked like it popped off the bone or something. All of these quarterbacks come in and they play extremely well against LSU because they, for some reason, can't handle somebody that can run around. They're not athletic enough. They don't communicate enough. They're not disciplined enough. It could be a combination of all of the above, but for some reason, they just can't handle it. They haven't been able to handle it. And this LSU team has been, outside of the first game against USC, where you're looking at them and going, I don't know about this, right? And then you see what they do, the rest of the way. And there's some games in there, like the South Carolina game where they fended off South Carolina, that's a really good win now. This day and age, they beat Ole Miss, they beat Arkansas, they beat the brakes off of Arkansas actually coming into that A&M game, and you're starting to feel really good about LSU. right? Coming off of the heels of that Arkansas game after just taking down Ole Miss in overtime at home. And then you had a big win, a gutsy win against South Carolina. But, you had Lenore Sellers, who's a running quarterback. They struggled. They found a way to win. South Carolina kind of gave it to them a little bit, but they found a way to win. Jackson Dart turned it on in the second half. They struggled with that a little bit. They held on. They made enough plays to hold on to that. Taylor Green just had a bad game. He's not. I don't think he's ready to carry a team yet. Then they lose 3 straight. So this is what bodes well for Vanderbilt, okay? Because we all know Diego Pavia. What can he do? What can he do best? Oh yeah, he can run. He can create. He can make something out of nothing, and that Diego Pavia is the king of that. And so this is where you look at it as an LSU fan, and you're like, oh gosh, like. You never, at the beginning of the season, you're like, okay, we're coming off a run. LSU fans are probably thinking at the beginning of the season, okay, we're coming off a run of Ole Miss, Arkansas, A&M, Bama, and Florida. Oh, we get some reprieve with Vanderbilt before we have to play Oklahoma. And oddly enough, and this is the Bizarro World season, which I know everyone listening to this podcast loves it, including myself, right? You get Vanderbilt. And they're looming on that schedule. So now, all of a sudden, a game that was once considered stress-free, a relief game, let's get people healthy, let's get back on track. It's at home. It'll be at night. Now it turns into a very stressful situation. Now it turns into okay, I hope we don't self-destruct. I hope the operation doesn't quit, because this is going to be really, really bad if in – the way they see Vanderbilt is they still see Vanderbilt. They don't see what Vanderbilt is now. If LSU loses this game, those fans are going to be pissed. Even though this Vanderbilt team is a legitimate team, they don't see it that way. And this will be an embarrassing loss for them. But here's the catch. Like, I think Diego Pavia is going to feast. He's going to have a ton of rushing yards. I don't think they're going to be able to do much they don't tackle well in space. They're not very disciplined as far as the reads go. They make the reads kind of easy for the quarterback. I think Tim Beck is going to have his way here with this team. And so you're looking at it going, okay, all right. If you're Vanderbilt, you're looking at it going, okay, well, they struggled with Lagway. They struggled with Milroe. They struggled with Reed. They struggled a little bit with Dart. They found a way to win. They struggled with Sellers. Lenore Sellers, that was the first game where you're like, okay, this Lenore Sellers guy might not be so bad. And then, he's become what he's become now. But this is, for LSU, it's a red flag. And it's going to be a problem. And I don't know that it's one of those things where I don't know if LSU has a whole lot of answers for that. And if, my early on thing is if Vanderbilt can hold the ball, if Vanderbilt can eat up yards, eat up clock like they do, this could be a very, very long evening for LSU. This could be one of those games where you're looking at it going, LSU's totally outmatched. Like they might fire Brian Kelly on the spot, because if you're LSU, and this is not a shot at Vanderbilt, but if you're LSU, you do not lose to Vanderbilt. You just don't lose to Vanderbilt, and that's the standard that they have. You lose to Vanderbilt, that's a problem, especially at home when you're LSU. And they don't know really what Vanderbilt's going to have to offer. And I tell you what they're going to have to offer. They're going to have a steady dose of run game with Diego Pavia and Cedric Alexander. They're going to have it's going to be a steady dose of option football and forcing these undisciplined guys to play well in space. I just don't trust that. And they could come out and prove me wrong. I just don't believe it. And I think right now you match that with, they were already a team that struggled against running quarterbacks before all of this, right? They could be, I would say the same thing, and they could be sitting at 9-1 or 11 or 10-1 or wherever their season's at. They could be, they could have beat they could have beat Florida. They could have beat Alabama. They could have beat A&M. They could have won all of those games. And I would still be saying the same thing. They struggle against running quarterbacks. That's going to be a problem. And so you throw in this tailspin that they're in. They've lost 3 in a row. When's the last time LSU lost 3 in a row? Maybe the year Ed Orgeron got fired. I don't think they ever lost 3 in a row that year, though. I'll have to go back and look through that. But they just you look at it and you're just I'm just kind of like, okay, well, this is going to be an interesting game. They're in a tailspin. I'm putting them on quit watch, honestly. And they're probably going to see this and go, okay, we're not quitting. But, just the symptoms are there. The signs are there. It's quit watch. The condition, it's kind of like a tornado watch. The conditions are favorable. And I think Diego Pavia getting a steady dose of that guy is not going to be fun for this defense. And so I'll get more into the specifics of why this run game is going to work. But for now, we'll just leave it at that. And so they're going to struggle. They're going to, they're going to have a hard time with Diego Pavia. They're going to have a hard time with this option running attack. If I'm Vanderbilt, 20 personnel, let's just freaking go, right? And say, LSU, come get you some. All right. But, honestly, his team's in a tailspin. I don't know offensively if they're in a rhythm either. They might need some 5-hour energy. Yeah, that's right. 5-hour energy. Our friends at 5-hour energy know how that being a passionate football fan isn't just a hobby, it's a way of life. It takes a lot of energy to power through all-day tailgates, touchdown celebrations, and agonizing second overtimes, right? Which is why they're creating Stand the Fan 5-hour energy shot with a special flavor called Fan Fuel. The energy shot is made just for super fans like us, the fans who are first in the parking lot and last to leave. We see you. All right, so you know what? After they play against after LSU plays against Diego Pavia, they're going to need some 5-hour energy. They're going to pass these things out. They're going to get a caseload of Stand the Fan energy shots at halftime because they're going to have to find a way to keep up with Diego Pavia. That is the 5-hour energy moment of the week, right? So it's going to be fun for Vandy. I don't know about LSU right now. They're not having too much fun down in Baton Rouge, but they need some Stand the Fan of 5-hour energy shots down there if they want to keep up with Diego Pavia. So 5-hour energy knows that no matter which team you root for, being a fan requires heart, soul, and a whole lot of energy. Whether you're prepping for a big tailgate or ironing your jersey, your game day to-do list is always a mile long. That's why limited edition Stand the Fan 5-hour energy shot is here to help keep you fueled through the season. So what's your fan fuel this week? Well, whatever it is, do it with a 5-hour energy. Also available on 5hourenergy.com. It's shipped nationwide. All right, welcome back. Thanks for making Locked On Vandy your first listen every single week. If you need a second listen, please check out Locked On SEC. Chris Gordy does a phenomenal job. We squad up every Thursday, and that show covering this roller coaster mess, whatever you want to call it, that is the SEC, has probably been pretty fun for Chris Gordy, and he gives you everything that you could ask for. Also, if you need a third listen, you get done with my show, you get done with Chris's show, and you're just still at the doldrums in your office or you're on that long commute, check out Locked On Ole Miss. Stephen Willis does a phenomenal job. They play Florida this week. It's going to be a fun week of shows for him. They are staring straight at a trip to Atlanta, I think for the first time ever. And Steve couldn't get enough of that. So coming off of, LSU has lost 3 in a row. So they're at a crossroads right now. And I said earlier, they struggle with running quarterbacks. It's just kind of how their season's gone, kind of how their defense is constructed, and just kind of what, I don't know, there's a culture problem. There's some issues down there, and it's rearing its ugly head. And I was concerned when they first hired. I'm gonna go on record and say I was concerned when they first hired Brian Kelly. I wasn't sold necessarily on that. He proved me wrong a little bit. He did some good things. He had two really good seasons, and the family it's falling apart right now. He's yelling at guys on the sidelines, and guys are yelling at him, and things are in disarray. He's yelling at coaches, and just losing his mind. And I know some of that's commonplace, but when things are kind of falling apart around you, and you're like that, it just means to me it means you don't have a grip on it, right? Because like yelling at a coach or yelling at a player is something that should happen organically or in the right moment, or but if things are going in disarray, like yelling at somebody, they're not going to hear that, and they're probably ignoring it, or yelling at coaches or losing your mind. It just, to me, I felt very uneasy about LSU, watching LSU play, and they played in that manner because I didn't feel like their leadership had himself under control, which I think bled throughout the entire program and throughout the entire sideline. And for the last 3 weeks, I don't think they've really had control on their emotions, the mental part of the game, and all of that, because they've struggled. Like I said, they've lost 3 in a row. They got crushed by Alabama, crushed by Texas A&M, and essentially crushed by Florida. And I say crushed because they should have beat Florida. That should have been an easy one for them, because Florida is decimated with injuries. They had a quarterback that had 1.5 hamstrings. I don't think he was ready to come back. He came back because the dude has guts. I have mad respect for DJ Lagway, right? But he probably shouldn't have came back, truthfully, because of where his hamstrings were. He felt good enough. He wanted to give it a go, and he gutted it out, man. And I was very impressed. So here's where I think, from a defensive perspective, that Vandy has an advantage. When I was watching that LSU game, here's what happened, or here's what I saw. I saw them getting after Garrett Nussmeier. Okay, I saw them sack him 7 times. They allowed just 16 points, and they were on the field a lot, right? And they just flat. And this Florida defense looked pissed off. Okay. You could tell it. You could tell this group was hungry. And say what you want to say about Billy Napier, those dudes play hard for him, right? They might not be talented. I don't want to say that, but they're decimated by injuries, for one. I think they had kind of a bare cupboard, so to speak, because Dan Mullen, I don't think, left a whole lot behind. A lot of people left, and a lot of people hit the portal, and I think they've had trouble with their roster management, but I think they've got a pretty good recruiting class, which is why they gave Billy Napier another chance. But dude, those dudes play hard, man. They're gonna, I think they're gonna get it. They're gonna get turned around. But they were able to get after Nussmeier. They were able to knock him around. They turned him over the very first. They turned him over, late in the third quarter. They got to him. Poked the ball out, and they went down and scored. I just think that this Florida defense just was super motivated. And when I was watching that, I'm sitting here thinking about, okay, well, what is Vanderbilt's defense going to look like, right? Because Vanderbilt's defense is very, very pressure oriented. They're aggressive. They're not a defense that, and I knew that was going to happen, because watching Clark Lee's defenses at Notre Dame, and B, knowing the personnel that we have, I knew that we had to play a certain style of defense, and it was supposed to be a pressure oriented, get after you, type of defense, and a defense that, sometimes you're going to get burned on big plays, because when you play that aggressively, sometimes you just leave yourself open occasionally. But, I was looking at him like, okay, well, if Florida can get after him, if Florida can sack him 7 times, I think with the protection problems, communication problems, sometimes Nussmeier's holding on to the ball too long, I think there's a chance there. I think LSU is going to have trouble with Vandy's defense, their defensive front, because I think the combination of, they just struggle in communication and pass pro, and when they got guys twisting and stunting and coming at you from all different angles, and bluffing left and coming off the right edge and, things like that, they're going to struggle with that a little bit. And they're going to, I think Florida was able to do it. And I think Vandy is, Miles Capers is going to have a big game. Corday Sidnor is going to have a big game. Zunk is going to have a big game. They're all. I think they're going to have a really, because LSU doesn't really run the ball incredibly well. And Nussmeier, when he's in a rhythm, he's good. He can pass, and if he has protection, he can make some throws, and he did. But when he's under duress, it gets a little bit dicey. So, but we'll dive more into the game plan stuff as we go. As the week goes on, I kind of like focus on some of these key matchups, and then Friday we put together the game plan, the keys to the game, and then we get you and I tell you why I think Vanderbilt's going to win, and I make all my other picks. So, so that's kind of like the 30,000 foot view of kind of what I see. Just what I've seen from LSU so far this year. But as I look further into how they play, I'll tell you more about why I think Diego Pavia is gonna dice him up, and I'll tell you a little bit more about how I think they're going to struggle protecting Garrett Nussmeier. And a lot of it's mentality, a lot of it's culture, and some of it is just they're just not sound. They just out athlete you. That's their team. They just out athlete you. They're not sound. That's why they can be got. That's why they've been gotten 3 times in a row. So, but recruiting it was a big part of the bye week. I'll tell you what that means next. Hey, it's FanDuel. Yeah, get ready to tackle some NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. Look at that. And if you went with my picks, I apologize. You probably didn't win your $150 in bonus bets, but that's okay. This week will be better. So the FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. Now, luckily, I didn't give you NFL picks because that's hard to pick too. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats. You can view live play-by-play and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. So just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Hey, game time. You ever want to get tickets and get it in an easy way? Well, Gametime has a new feature called Gametime Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. Gametime Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Imagine what that's like, especially last minute. So curation makes, like I said, the curation of Gametime Picks makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, whatever you're going to see. It just makes it easier. And all-in pricing, there's no surprises. Shows you the total up front. You see what you see is what you get, and I love that. And what I love even more is that you get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. It's the lowest price guarantee as well, or Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. Gametime has the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Your purchase is covered with that. Isn't that amazing? Well, if any of that sounds good to you, take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime Picks. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege. That's LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Game time. All right. Thanks for making Locked On Vandy your first listen each and every day. As we wrap up the show, if you're hungry at around breakfast time, you should head over to Creval Bagel. I had a Creval Bagel the other day, and if you haven't had it and you're in the Nashville area, it's down over in Creval, hence the name. I don't think there's a single thing there that I don't like. Their schmears are good. The cinnamon sugar bagel with the maple walnut schmear is good. The cheddar bagel with bacon, egg, and cheese. They have custom drinks. It's amazing. Ben, the owner, has done a phenomenal job. Started it out of the story's amazing. He started it out of his house in COVID, making bagels for random people in his neighborhood, and just caught on from there. And now he's on fire. And he's going to make a second location, and then a third location. What? And then a fourth location. What? And he's going to be nationwide. I don't know how long that'll take, but right now Ben's building his second location. So check out Creve Hall Bagel. You won't regret that. All right. So recruiting has been surprisingly good for Vanderbilt. And when I say surprisingly good, it's because anytime you hear recruiting, it's always people flipping away from Vandy and not to Vandy. Well, the first story was actually that, right? It was actually that situation. You get, and I did a whole show on Austin Howard, then he decommitted, I think, days later, actually. So it was the typical Vanderbilt story of, we got this really good linebacker, and then he flips away. Well, the place he flipped to was Mississippi State. He realized that, okay, this Mississippi State team's not going to be good. They're not going to be good. And Vandy's playing really well. I think it was just a test to see if they were going to keep Clark Lee. I think Clark Lee is safe. And so Austin Howard, well, guess what? He is back in the saddle, right? He rejoined the class. He recommitted. So he decommitted, committed to Mississippi State, decommitted, then recommitted to Vanderbilt. And the biggest thing is, he said Vanderbilt's family, and the atmosphere, the culture has been like that, since Clark Lee made all these changes, right? And he's been integral in creating that type of environment that I think makes recruits feel comfortable. Plus, the NIL potential in Nashville probably doesn't hurt. But he also said this. He said Coach Lee has no doubt in his mind that I'm going to be the focal point of this defense with work needed. He said he's going to give his all to get me to that point. And so, I did a show about him as being a 6'1", 230-pound off the ball linebacker. He could. I think he's going to kind of grow into. Of course, on the height side, he's going to be a little short to be an inside linebacker, but I think he's going to be a hell of a guy because, you watch him play, and, the fact that he plays on the outside, on the edge in high school shows you the athletic ability that he has, and he's going to bring that to the inside linebacker position. You need, like, these inside linebackers now, like, you need them to be able to cover a lot of ground, right? Because they're going to be good enough to cover the A gap downhill and check A gap, check B gap, scrape C gap, and chase from inside out. Like, you're going to need somebody like that. And so, what I said earlier in the year when he committed about 7 months ago, I think he committed pretty early. When I broke him down, I was like, man, this guy can run, man. This guy's going to be a force on this defense, man. He's going to be all over the place, man. Like, you can't stop him. And it's still true. And I think he's going to be a really good inside linebacker. He's going to have good leadership qualities. He's somebody that's committed to being a leader. And I think he's going to be a really big part of this defense. So I'm excited to welcome back to the Commodore family, Mr. Austin Howard. That's right, Austin Howard. He's a kid from Memphis, Bartlett High School. So welcome back. Another one that I'm kind of fired up about, and we talked about this last week about how Vanderbilt, they need to bolster their defensive backfield. They're losing C.J. Taylor, they're losing DeRicky Wright. They need to kind of get some guys in here that can kind of backfill that. And I think with Dante Carter playing as well as he has, and he's had some freshman moments, and he's had some time to kind of sit back and develop a little bit, get enough playing time to get that action. And he's developing quite nicely. But I wasn't sure what their plans were as far as bringing in a portal guy. What are they going to do there? But it seems like they had their eyes on Davin Chandler and also Kason Lawrence as well as a safety, kind of an athlete. So they're going to have two guys they're bringing in this class that can play back there. And I think you add them with Dante Carter and Mark. And in crew. They're going to be really good. He was committed to Virginia, so he wants to go to a high academic school, and he chose Vanderbilt because he wants to also play in the SEC. So it's he announced he's a 6'2", 180-pound safety, and he's he's pretty excited, man. And he said he likes how the safeties play. If it's a skill set, he loves Clark Lea's defense, and who wouldn't? You watch them play; they are aggressive, hyper aggressive. So I'm all in for him, and I'll do probably a more in-depth breakdown of all of these commits once they sign pen to paper and officially become Commodores. So, but just wanted to mention that they committed. That's big news, and with the December signing period coming very soon, you hope that sticks, but that's just the way of recruiting. You never know. So he was committed to Virginia at one point, and he decommitted. So he could just as easily decommit from Vanderbilt, which I don't think is going to happen, but you never know. So, but still, welcome aboard, and we'd love to have you here in black and gold, and I think you'll do well in Clark Lea's defense, and I think that's pretty safe to say. But that's all I got for you today here on a Monday. Make sure you enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll see you back here next time on the Locked On Vandy podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network. Anchor down. Peace.